G'day, guys, and welcome back to the Daily Discomfort podcast. This is episode number 14, and we're here with Lachlan Mitchell, who specialises in shadow work and helping people to rewire their psychology so they can achieve higher performance in their career and in their life. Lachlan, did you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, Michael, appreciate you having me on here and being able to have this conversation and talk about some of the deeper things that generally isn't talked about as much in this world and in the culture that we're in. So I'm really passionate about helping people understand who they are, because I believe that when someone can fully understand who they are, why they are that way, right, they get to recognize their fears, they get to recognize the insecurities, they get to recognize the beliefs that are actually shaping their reality, right? Because everyone, generally speaking, is walking through life and we've all got these triggers, right? We've all got these, things that piss us off, right? We've all got these slight insecurities that show up, in our jobs, in our career, in our relationships with our partners. And, to become the best version of you, to be able to operate in a way where those things don't affect you as much. Like imagine someone's fear of judgments at an 8, right? And if we were to turn the dial down to a 2, imagine how much more free you'd feel in life. Imagine how much more simple life would be if all those triggers and the way that your body and nervous system reacted to the world around us was dialed down, and you just had more happiness, more love, more joy, more opportunity, more confidence. Like it's a totally different reality. Um, and it's been a wild journey these last couple of years, diving deeper into it and working with high performing individuals who, making anywhere from 20,000 to $500,000 a month, and working with them to be in tune with themselves and like learn how to actually regulate their emotions and feel their emotions, because that's a big one. Oh my God, I have to feel my emotions. Specifically as men, we just love to intellectualize, and the first step is recognizing what's happening and learning how to feel and be present, because that's the foundational skills that makes life worth living, right? So that's what I do. I work with high performing guys that are ready to understand who they really are and to create the life they want to create by integrating and overcoming the core emotions, fears, and beliefs that limit them.
I love it. I love how you put that. Yeah. And how did you get into it first? Like, what was your journey that led you to go, this is what I'm going to do now. This is how I'm going to help. This is how I'm going to serve.
Yeah. So I was really lucky enough to, in school, to be exposed to a mentor that just made me look at the world in a totally different way. And I went on this rite of passage program. So I spent 3 weeks out in the wilderness, learning about who I was and writing a philosophy about life that we then had to share in front of all the other boys. So this is, like, traditionally speaking, like a rite of passage is such an important thing to help boys move from boy psychology to man psychology. And for me, this was, my first big initiation, 3 weeks away from mum and dad, 3 weeks around just like my other classmates. There was 16 of us. And 3 weeks, being exposed to these new stimulus and these new challenges, because when we push the threshold of our environment and expose ourselves and push past that window of tolerance, that's when we evolve, right? That's when we can overcome. That's when we can learn to compensate in new positive ways. So this 3-week immersion program was a really powerful process for me to learn how to learn how to actually just be me without the mask, right? And understand who I was and what made me with my community and my family and like a bit of purpose, right? And so for a 15-year-old kid, it's a pretty big
I know I
you know
wasn't thinking about that at 15. I was thinking about how I could fit in with the other kids. I wasn't thinking about I wasn't acknowledging that I was putting a mask on at that point.
yeah. Yes, that was like a big catalyst, is that very
Mm.
first piece for me. And then it was been a series of just more events, more opportunities. I got into coaching. I paid my first coach when I was 19, after working in a tech startup in sales in a very toxic culture. And again, we go through those edges and we realize all the fuckedness of life. That's generally a good enough mirror for us to go, oh, I've got this fear of judgment. Or like, oh, that person's a piece of shit and that make me angry. Okay, I wonder why I'm angry here. So the second catalyst being like the job and I was working in, and then opening up the can of worms of self-development and identity and personality and love and connection and joy, which then led into more coaching and more containers and more self-development and a lot of men's work, and men's circles and men's groups, and then more high performance coaching and different certifications, and working with all types of people, from high performance athletes to people that have actually done dual degrees in psychology and counseling, that came to work with me. And then now primarily working with business owners and entrepreneurs.
It's pretty cool, even in saying that, working with people that are actually studying psychology and counseling. How did you feel when they were asking you for help? Given that I'm assuming it's similar ground, maybe they haven't studied, and we'll dive further into the shadow work and that side of things. But maybe with mainstream psychology, they haven't delved into it so much. I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you got to understand. So a lot of mainstream, like if you do so psychology degree in general is generally your 3 years, and then you can do honors, and then you can go and do your 2 years of masters or like 2 years of supervision. And like I've got a really great friend. He's like an advanced psychotherapist that specializes in trauma counseling. And the training he does as a psychotherapist is far deeper than what a general psychologist will go and do, right? Because it's why there's a big problem with like mental health in Australia, and why there's such big waiting lists, and why the accessibility is so poor, is a lot of psychs just don't have the depth of trauma training that they need, that is actually required in order to help people process and move through their emotions. Because, there's a lot of foundational counseling work that's great just to help people connect. Majority things that we're using is like CBT, which is great for the surface level pieces and rewiring thoughts and feelings. But, if we don't ever address the root cause of what really happened at those younger years and what really shaped us, then it's kind of like you're trying to put out a fire with a sprinkler when there's gas still feeding into the room, lighting it all up. It's like you got to find the gas turn off to change what's happening, right? Otherwise, you're just giving people tools, and tools are great, but again, you gotta, in my perception, you get to go and learn about who you are, and you get to find how it made you who you are, and discover the meaning of it, right? And change your perception, change your paradigm of the past. Because when you change your perception and paradigm of the past around mum and dad, around childhood, all of a sudden your future perception changes, because you're no longer being governed by those same fears, those same repressed emotions that are held in place in our body. Right? That's why so many people have a lot of the guys I coach have varying levels of what I'd call dysregulation. So either anxiety, overwhelm. A lot end up in a freeze state. So there's a thing called depersonalization or derealization, which is essentially the process where someone's really dissociated, and it feels like they're not actually present in their body. It feels like they're kind of behind their body, seeing the world around them. And it's essentially like when we look at like our fight, flight, freeze, it's a deep state of freeze. And because of what they've been through in their life, their coping mechanism is to freeze or to run or to fight back. And that derealization is actually a really common thing that a lot of guys go through, because their nervous system's just so activated and so reactive that the only way to actually bring it down is the survival response of dissociate.
Yeah. Is that almost like moving from hyper to hypo arousal?
Yeah.
Is that a similar concept? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
I only learned of that this year. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. What I want to dive into is actually something that you said earlier when you talked about just noticing like people at work, you didn't like that person, or you didn't like something they did, and you start to question, well, why don't I like that? That kind of leads me into that point of maybe what we notice in other people is a reflection of what we notice in ourselves, and we start to project that, and we start to bias towards the things that we like about other people because we like that about ourselves, and then vice versa. If we don't like someone else or certain qualities, it's probably because we don't like that within ourselves as well. Is this where we start to move into that area of shadow work?
Yeah, so the shadows, all the things, both good and bad, that we've hidden beneath the surface of the mask we didn't realize we were wearing, right? And this is the whole facade, right? And the coping mechanisms we created growing up in order to fit in, right? Because we all need to be seen in a certain way, right? And there's we don't want to be seen in a certain way as well. And so we're always managing other people's perceptions of us, whether we consciously do it or unconsciously do it. And you know, like our core, we all have a strategy. We all have a strategy as to how we deal with going through life. And so if someone's core fear is judgment, one of their strategies is that they're going to mitigate judgment by making sure that they're perfect, right? Which is what leads us to perfectionism, or like really high standards, right? Where they become really critical of themselves because they want to perform, they want to be at this level. So then they can't be judged, they can't be criticized, so they can't be told that what they're doing is bad or wrong. And so it ends up being this big strategy to control the perception of how others see them. And again, it's so common. Like everyone has their strategy to varying degrees, right? Everyone's trying to be seen as strong or seen as put together. And there's people that they don't want to be seen as weak. For men, a really common one is I don't want to be seen as weak.
Yeah.
And the way that like I often elicit this is I ask them a open-ended question. I say, and if you're listening right now in the audience, like answer this in your head. Notice the very first thing that comes up. Okay, my deepest fear is, and just allow that thing to come up. You ready? Um, I have to be seen as. Who do you need to be seen as? Who is this person you're trying to be seen as right now? Right. Um, the thing that no one can know about me is. Right? So that question's a really specific question because this is our secret. This is the thing that holds that creates a sense of shame, right? I can't let anyone know, about my sexuality, or I can't let anyone know that I, binge eat. I can't let anyone
Mm.
know that I, nearly hurt somebody in a fight. Everyone has their
Mm.
secret that they just can't tell the world. And this is the shame, right? And shame festers in this dark, dark space because we're trying to hide it from everybody. And when you can actually just acknowledge the shame and you can actually bring it into the light, it actually starts to dissolve, right? So, circling back to your question around the things that trigger us, are mirrors, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I had an experience recently with somebody that was quite narcissistic, and
Mm.
and that trait of them being narcissistic can be quite confrontational because a lot of people might label them as manipulative, as controlling, um, and but at the core of it, they're also a fucking human, right? And I had to really take a step back and breathe and go, what did this person go through in order for them to become this controlling and this fearful, to always manage the perception? And I thought about it because I knew the person, and I was like, fuck, they have been through a lot in their life. They
Yeah.
did not get needs met the same way that I got my needs met. They
Yeah.
were pushed and belittled and unsupported and hurt. And I go, I understand why they are the way they are, right? And his narcissism as well is like, I don't want to be seen as a narcissist. So him being a narcissist threatens my ego because I'm like, fuck, like, oh, I hope no one sees me as that, right? Or another example, who I was talking to someone else before, um, like, ungenuine, or yeah, like they're not genuine. And I was like
Yeah.
to the guy, I was like, and you don't want to be seen as ungenuine, do you? He's like, no, I want to be seen as honest. I want to be seen as this. And I'm like, great. So how would you be seen if you were perceived as being ungenuine? Or how would it feel if you were perceived as being ungenuine? And he's like, it'd feel like shit, right? So your reticular activating system in your brain is always scanning for threats. And so you see this one guy that's very polarizing to you, that's being ungenuine, right? And it pisses you off because you take pride in your in the way that you present to the world. You're a very
Mm.
genuine and honest person, right? But it's only polarizing because there's a part of you that's so afraid that people won't see you as genuine, that'll see you as fake, that'll see you as not real.
Mm.
And so the ego is always trying to protect us. And that's the cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this side of things. I think personally too, because this year I've probably dealt with a lot of it myself. Like, I wouldn't say I'm someone who gets frustrated often, at least not at other people. And when I do, I notice I'm probably frustrated at myself for something. And it's almost, if I worked on that first, I wouldn't be as reactive. But when I have noticed things, one big thing for me was reliability. Like, a big value of mine and in friendships and in other people is reliability. Like, if you say something, go do it. Yet I've had so many times this year where I've had to call myself out on these things, and I'll do it in front of people now. But there was one time when I was a little bit frustrated with someone because of that. And I'm like, why is this bothering me so much? And then I thought, well, how do you feel when you feel like, you're not integral, or you have gone back on your word, you haven't followed through? I'm like, fuck, I'm pretty disappointed in myself. Like, that knocks the ego a little bit. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, no wonder I'm just projecting that onto someone else there. And when you talk about the topic of narcissism, the first time I ever heard about that or dove into it was a Robert Greene book, The Laws of Human Nature. And I started reading about it, and I'm like, wait, that's me. Oh, wait, that's me there too. And it was crazy to get that awareness and then start to see, not only for people in my life, like where I noticed that, but just to go from that point of, hey, I've done that too. Like, it's not just them. I can't just say that they're doing the wrong thing here. And I think what you mentioned before is like the real gold nugget of all of that is being able to see someone, this is the best way I've heard it said, as that little hurt kid that's walking around in an adult's body, right? Because that's realistically what's happening for the majority of us. And, you wouldn't get angry or treat a little kid in that way. And even though it's an adult, and yes, we have responsibility, and we should be responsible for how we conduct ourselves and talk to other people, I still think it's a very strong quality, especially for men, to start to learn, is to take a step back and just try to empathize or try to see it from a different angle, like you're saying. So, can we take a deeper dive, I guess, from what you've seen with some of the men and maybe in women that you've worked with, when it comes to this shadow work, when it comes to projecting onto other people, when it comes to triggers? What are some really outstanding things that you've seen? And then once these people resolve it, what's the result of that? Like, what actually changes in their life?
Yeah, cool. So one of the biggest pieces in general is when we break it down from like a bit of a bottom up / top down approach, our nervous system's always going to dictate the way that we move throughout life, right? If you're someone that is very fast to fight or flight or very reactive, it's a sign that you've got a very small window of tolerance, right? And the reason your window of tolerance is because your coping mechanisms have been developed in some very specific ways, right? And it means you're generally more emotionally reactive. So you do not have control over your emotions. And this is a really great thing that I say to a lot of guys that take pride in what they do. And I say, well, no, you're actually being reactive and you don't have any control here. And that's why you're reacting. That's why you're projecting. That's why you're being a victim into this situation. And you're complaining about somebody else because you're unwilling to take accountability for your own actions to the degree required. So when we look at some of the core generalized fears, often with men, there's a lot of repressed anger, right? Where we never got taught how to express that anger. We got kind of shamed for being angry and all this toxic masculinity stuff. And so it left this whole generation of men that are quite timid, that are, your quintessential nice guy. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you got guys that have no idea how to control their emotions and they'll lash out and they're more prone to violence and they're more prone to getting in fights. I tend to find, at least with the guys I've worked with, they channel their anger quite well into a little bit more cutthroat and cunningness, which is a great thing, and that's what's made them successful. But essentially, like the core piece, like the 3 core wounds, right, are I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm unworthy. Those are the big 3 that exist beneath everything else, right? And when you can go in and can understand where these core wounds have come from, where this feeling of I'm not good enough, right? Because it's like, why else do we spend so much time, energy pursuing to get ripped and jacked? Why do we spend so much time looking at how to get all this money? Why do we spend so much time trying to fucking get this status and be seen in this certain way? Because there was a little boy that never felt enough, that is doing whatever the fuck he can in order to feel good enough, to prove to dad, to prove to mum, to prove to the kids at school, to prove to the teachers. And so that core wound of I'm not enough has driven him to this point. And maybe he's finally there. Maybe he's made the money. Maybe he's had the family, and now he's gone, oh, what do I do now? Or even when they're younger guys that make a lot of money, do all the things, and then, they might still be under 30. And they're like, what do I do now? And it's normally at that point that they go, okay, I should probably work on some of these emotions and like start really peeling back the layers of who I am. Because it's well good and all. Like, I can help someone create high levels of performance and output. I can help evolve their identity and personality to own a level of their darkness and be more cunning, be more assertive, like be less neurotic, right? And enhance this version to get those goals. But the step further than that is, well, how do we actually start to feel a bit more happiness? How do we find the joy? How do we find the peace? How do we find those moments of fulfillment? Right? That's the magic in there, Michael, is when we can find those moments of fulfillment and presence, right? So when you go in and you actually start to process a lot of these core fears and these core insecurities that often come from mum and dad and come from childhood, all of a sudden your paradigm starts to change, because you no longer perceive like what happened to you as a kid as a bad thing, right? You start to see everything that it taught you, everything that you gained from it, right? Because everything that you've went through has made you exactly who you are right now. And if you hadn't have gone through that, imagine how much stuff in life you would have missed out on, right? You think about, like, even just you right here, right now, you think about the journey you've been on, right? And all the troubling, harsh challenges. And now think about your greatest, most grateful memories. The people in your life that mean so much to you. The people that have been there and have given you the love and the support and the joy. Do you think that if you hadn't gone through those really hard times and those really hard experiences, you would have even gotten all these beautiful things?
Yeah. Even the perspective to notice them, even the perspective to be grateful for them, I think, is if we're personifying that in experience. Because initially I was like, you're kind of like, what were the hard things? Who are the people? Like, because at times there's for guys, they don't feel supported, right? And I've had times like that in the past, but now I notice the support more. And I think it's hard for guys at times if they don't feel supported. They're like, why should I support other people? But it's like, you're going to keep creating that reality if that's what you believe. And then you go, well, your lashback is I'm not going to help other people, like the world's against me kind of thing. You just keep running that cycle. But you're right, like it does change your perspective when I guess it's essentially gratitude as well, but it's looking back to see how your past shaped your reality now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. There was one thing that I saw with some of the work that you do, and you talk about the threshold moment for high performers. Is this in relation to the window of tolerance?
Definitely can be. Like, we all have our own individual threshold, right? And it might be a threshold with how much stress we can have, right? It could be hitting that point where you're like, oh my God, I've gotten all the things that I once wanted. I'm making the money. I've got the car, I'm living in the apartment, I'm doing the things, and I still feel empty. And so that's also that threshold moment where you start to like go, oh my God, well, why am I meant to be here? What am I meant to be doing? So everybody has their variation of threshold that they will go through in their life. And a big part of it is like the nervous system, right? So when we're pushing that edge and we're going into hypoarousal and we've hit that point where we're quite reactive, like that's a sign that our body's not handling. Our body is feeling under threat, right? And there's a lot of high performers out there that do hit those moments, consistently throughout the month. And the better that you learn how to regulate, the better you learn how to recognize the triggers, the better you become at processing your emotions. You turn the dial down on the intensity of all of that. And you actually, tend to be a bit more happier. you tend to have a little bit more love, you tend to have a little bit more compassion, a little bit more joy, and life starts to get better versus being like this fucking, like, the image in my mind is like the kid that throws the tantrum because he didn't get what he wanted, right? And there's so many people like that are like, I didn't get what I want, and I can't have this, and I want that, and like the complaining is a lot, and that gets really tiring. That gets really, really tiring.
Would you say too, with that same sort of character, the person that feels like it's never enough, not enough money, not enough cars for a guy, and not enough potential sexual partners, things like this, do you think that just reflects of that feeling of not enoughness in themselves? Like
Oh,
they
totally.
can't actually feel that within themselves, so that's what they see.
Totally. They're
Yeah.
just trying to compensate, right? I got to get more,
Yeah.
I got to get bigger muscles. And it's like, you can still have all the cars and you can still have the amazing lifestyle and, have all the girls. But like, when you do it from a place of need, I need this, I need to show people, like, I need to be this person so other people see me as this, high level guy. Like, you're living your wounding, like you're living the insecurity, and like if that all then leaves, then what have you got? Like, that's actually a common thread that I've talked to guys about is, um, they are their business, they are their job. You take that away, all of a sudden their identity's like being questioned. They don't know who they actually are anymore because everything is wrapped up around money and their business, and that all comes back to their worth because they never actually developed the intrinsic worth in who they are and the qualities that they have. Everything is an external thing. They need this external thing to internally feel good, right? And so they keep looking, they keep searching for this stuff, which realistically is never going to feed that internal enoughness. Um, like an example I'll share personally is that, for example, in my last relationship, I felt like I failed my partner. I felt like I didn't do a good enough job loving her and looking after her, and I triggered her a fair bit as well. And the relationship ended really beautifully. Like, I couldn't have asked for it to end in a more beautiful way. And she's like, thank you so much for being you. Like, because everything that happened in our relationship helped her heal, helped her grow, helped her start learning deeper about who she was. And she would tell me, like, I'm grateful, like, you didn't do anything wrong. But I was still shaming myself because I thought that I wasn't doing enough. I thought that I didn't show up. And no matter how much someone else could tell me that, I wouldn't feel it, right? And
Mm.
it wasn't until about 5 months after the breakup, um, after I'd gone through my la la land phase of like everything's fine, and then the grief hits a little bit deeper, that I sat down and I took myself through a big shame process, and looking at all the times in my life I felt shame from when I was growing up, shame at school, shame in the last couple of years. Like, I was like, fuck, there's a lot of shame here that I haven't thought about in a while. But because this incident had come up with her, right, it gave me the chance to recognize how much shame there was underneath this. She was a big trigger moment to recognize a core part of my identity that had been carrying all of this stuff. And so it wasn't until I took myself through the holographics process, which is like this 3 to 4 hour self process, or that I take guys through as well, that I got to go through and I got to see everything that she gained from me not being enough, right? And then I got to see everything that I gained from me not being enough, because I wouldn't be the coach I am today if I didn't trigger her and she didn't spend 2.5 years going to all these different events and all these different things and bettering herself and putting herself first, and like, in an even more powerful way, self-initiating. Because if I triggered her, she would never be reactive. She would never yell. She would never do anything. She'd say, can you just give me some space? And I would. And then she'd sit there and she'd process it. And like within a few hours, she'd be totally okay, right? She'd sit there and she'd actually move through the emotions herself. And so she was a massive teacher for me, learning how to
Mm.
actually set some boundaries and self-initiate and put myself first, and notice when my triggers are coming up, it's my responsibility to handle them, my responsibility
Yeah.
to unpack them. And I got to the end of that process. I'll send it to you. I think you'll enjoy it. I wrote it all out and I turned it into this like mini podcast thing, which is like this AI podcast that you hear it and you're like, oh my God. Because I got to listen to this AI podcast version of everything that I've written down, and hearing it in this third person and them explaining it, it just helped it drop in even deeper that like if I hadn't of not been good enough, everything I would have lost. If I hadn't have triggered her, if I hadn't have been the person that I was, then she wouldn't have gone through her experiences. She wouldn't have done the healing that she had have gone through. I wouldn't be the coach I am today because I wouldn't have learned all of this stuff. And so the idea of like, I wish I had have done things differently, right? People only wish they had have done things differently because they can't see everything that they gained from the actions they did. And this is the magic of the perfection, wholeness, and completeness. Because when you can find the beauty, when you can find everything you gained and everything you would have lost, you see the past as perfect, right? Because at the end of the day, we can't change the past. We can't do anything about what's happened in the past. All we have control of is our paradigm, is our perception. So, for all the guys that feel like they fucked up in their relationship, until you recognize everything you gain from it and everything you would have lost if it hadn't have happened that way, you'll keep perpetuating the feeling of shame and guilt and not enoughness, right? And that's the magic of this work, is you internally changing these core fucking feelings and sensations and wounds that come up and being able to move through it and come out the other side and go, oh, like literally, Michael, I came out of this 4-hour process and I felt like a different fucking human. And I've been doing this work for 4 or 5 years now. And that was probably one of the most potent emotional processes I've ever done.
Yeah.
And that's after spending a lot of money on other coaches and programs and courses, right? Like the deepest triggers are the biggest gateways to healing. And the biggest gateways to just absolute like freedom internally and expansion of love, right? And there's so much there. There's so much there to be able to resolve and find the gratitude and perfection in.
Do you think it is in the sense that you've gone and done that work and you've seen that much healing, which has allowed you to grow? Do you think men don't do that because they're generally unaware of it and they're checking in or getting the signal of the broadcast of get bigger and stronger, be the fittest guy, make all the money, get all the girls, achieve the status? Do you think they're just kind of dialed into that radio station and they're literally just unaware that this is the thing will improve them? Or are they just scared of it? Are they just scared of what's going to come up? And, are they actually acknowledging how much shit that they've got suppressed and they just don't want to deal with?
So I think it's both, right? Number one, like when you have a clear map, if there's a map and someone says, Michael, there's a map, and if you follow this map exactly the way that it is, you'll go get treasure. You're more likely to go get the treasure when you've got the map. This whole self-development space, this whole uncovering who you are, like no one has a very good map, right? Like no one does. I've spent a lot of money
And there's
on
a million maps. So you're like, which one do I take?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so it's like the mental load, the overwhelm to understand, like, where do I even start? Like, even with AI, like, you can go and talk to AI and it's really great, but there's no start and end point right now. Like, there's no real model to facilitate that letting go. Like, I've got my models that I'm building because I want the map so it's clearer for people to know where to start. But paradoxically, on the other side is there's always resistance, right? There's always fear. The ego doesn't want to have to acknowledge the uncomfortable things. They don't want to have to face the projections. Like the thing that we hate most about others is just a reflection of the stuff that we haven't accepted inside ourselves. And so that's really uncomfortable for the ego because it's just coming back to, the fight flight response in the body where we're feeling unsafe. And so there is a huge piece around like the idea of having to sit in emotions and feel emotions. We didn't get taught how to really do that, right? And no one really modeled it to us either. And so it's why it's getting a lot better now in the world, but it's why it's always been such this polarizing thing is like feeling your emotions and processing your emotions and uncovering them. Like it's not a normal thing to witness, especially as a man, because we never had the role models, right? Like I'll share a quick story that I took two of my clients to a men's circle last week before last. 22 years old, 23 years old, young guys. And this men's circle was, there's average age is probably 40 years old, up to 75.
Yeah.
And like there's some tough looking guys in there, big tattoos, like truck drivers, right? And these two young lads got to sit there and watch 15 men open up vulnerably and share. And these two guys after were like, I was so nervous, but then these big scary looking dudes just started sharing, and all my worry went away, because I was like, oh my God, like you mean men can talk like this? You mean men can share and not be judged and not be criticized? And then like we went deeper into the night of the men's circle where people were able to go in and like actually look at some of those core emotions, not just share, but then be processed in it. Learn how to better communicate with it. Like communicate in their relationships, communicate with themselves, acknowledge the emotions, understand their archetypes. So it is a process of exposure, right? Because when we're exposed enough to it, it starts to become normal. It's like the whole, you're the sum of the 6 people you hang around, right? 6 people around you are all making $1 million. Wouldn't be too long before you make $1 million. And that's a magic thing I find. And then the importance of community, brotherhood, connection, and environment is you can put yourself in the right places. You've solved a lot of the problems.
Yeah. I was going to ask you actually, so have you had your own personal experiences in these men's circles before taking other guys there? And then my follow-up question, which could have actually been in one of these groups, when we talk about like emotions being suppressed and stored in the body, stored in the nervous system, have you ever done any of the somatic practices, breathwork practices that, well, if you'd like to talk a little bit more about your experience with those, with the men's circles, men's groups, and then also those sorts of modalities for helping healing, helping transformation, helping growth.
Yeah. So like the men's group, so it's on a variation of modalities now, all sorts. So from NLP to like Jungian shadow work, men's work, like archetypal type work, to somatic processing of sensations. So going able to process what you're feeling without going into the story, right? A lot of people fucking love the story. I have to tell my clients, be like, listen, if I interrupt you and cut you short, it's because I don't give a fuck about your story. I care about what you're feeling, because we go into the story in order to compensate, to justify. And like some people really love to just tell me. They love to tell me all these things. And it's great to tell me. But if you want to go just talk, go to a psychologist or a counselor and spend a couple years there rehashing the same stuff. I want to look at the emotions. I want to look at the sensations. I want to look at the unmet needs that someone's really feeling, right? Because that's the magic of processing it. That's the magic of recognizing, okay, in that moment at work when someone belittled me, I'm feeling like, oh, yep, I feel that in my chest. Oh, yeah, it's tight. Oh, yeah, it's an 8 out of 10. Okay. What does this like yuckiness, this hurt need in order to let go a little bit, in order to surrender its purpose? And I breathe into it. I need some safety. And tuning into my body. Okay, do I have access to safety right now? Yep. Okay, I've got access to some safety. Okay, that initial hurt's getting less. All right, I'm hurt. Why am I hurt right now? What does this remind me of? Oh, when I was 10 and, mum yelled at me and I felt hurt and I felt not good enough. I'm like, ooh, okay, right. I'm feeling that sensation there. And what do I need to know about that situation? I need to know that mum was just angry. It wasn't really about me. So it didn't mean I did anything wrong, which means there's actually nothing wrong about me, which means that I've got the level of worth. I've got the security. I've got the stability. Bring that energy back to that place, that trigger in the office. Bring in that same thing of you didn't actually do anything wrong. Someone's just pissed off and doesn't know how to communicate to you. And so being able to dissolve like those situations like that, like I just did, is such a phenomenal piece. In terms of like the breath work and somatic stuff, so like a big piece in men's work is like, man, I've done some crazy men's circles where, you know, there's one guy and 20 guys around him. He's in the middle on the floor and there's like a couple footy pads there and he is just unleashing absolute fucking hell on these footy pads, just, you know, screaming and saying fuck you. And it's like directed though, it's intentional. It's like bringing up all the pain in his life and actually giving it a pathway to get out of his body, right? A lot of people get angry, but they're angry just for the sake of being angry, versus in these circles where it's facilitated by trained facilitators, they're being able to direct this core rage, you know, the rage from the people in their life where they got judged, they got rejected, they got, you know, whatever happened for them. And so that's an example of like a somatic release, you know, a very cathartic release. And a lot of guys have never learned how to be angry. They never learn how to fully unleash that rage because, you know, I talk to guys a lot about this, you know, because they make it mean something. If they're angry, then it's bad. If they're seen to be angry, then they're out of control. And I'm like, man, you know, it's better. It's like you teach. What's a better metaphor than that? Like it's better to be a soldier in a garden than a gardener in a war. And so you have to learn how to channel the energy. You have to learn how to utilize the energy, so then it doesn't actually affect you. Right? It's the whole quote of like, you didn't know how much violence it took to become this peaceful, this calm. And so you have to teach a man how to do the thing, how to let out the rage, how to let out the emotion. Otherwise, he's just going to store it in his body. And often the people that are the most repressed emotionally, they end up being they can be really manipulative, or they can be nice guys. And nice guys can be manipulative as well because, you know, the nice guys are the worst.
This is the thing, when I first read or listened to that book from Dr. Robert Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and I think there was David Dieter, Way of a Superior Man, like two books, I think, for any guy looking to do the work, and especially if they're a nice guy. But I almost thought of that earlier. There's kind of those two archetypes you spoke of. There's the nice guy, and then there's the guy who is angry and does lash out and is violent. And when you talk about being the soldier in the garden, I always picture the samurai, right? Like I've always had this inclination. I've always appreciated like some of the, I guess, Japanese like stories and fables. Hence why I probably got a Japanese leg sleeve as well. But the idea, and also this idea of the warrior poet. So it's like being the guy that is capable, as Jordan Peterson says, learning to tame the monster, something along those lines, like having capability there. Otherwise it's cowardice. Like someone can say, yeah, it's not right to fight or be violent, but maybe they're just not capable of doing it as well. And if time came that they had to stand up for themselves or defend someone they love, they couldn't do it. Well, that would be cowardice in that situation there. But it seems to be like all things in life, there's this balancing act between the nice guy who often is passively projecting that anger, right? It tends to be what happens. And passive aggression, although I'm assuming they wouldn't like to hear it, they're probably pretty big narcissists as well. And then you've got guys on the other side of the spectrum who I would imagine are probably still narcissists too, but they're just more blunt about their aggression. They're just like, I'm going to show all my anger out here, but I'm not going to show my weakness. So to give the listeners a bit more of an insight to that, can we dive a little bit more into each one of those archetypes, like the nice guy, and then what do we call the aggressive guy?
Yeah, so it's a great way to look at it is through masculine and feminine dynamics. So like light masculine, dark masculine, light feminine, dark feminine. Cool. And you've got different variations of all of them. Like you've got the juvenile masculine, which is, very much the boy energy, trying to prove to the world, trying to be seen, trying to get acceptance, right? And then like as the immature starts to mature, we start to step into the healthy ideals of a masculine man, and strength and courage and authenticity and ownership and integrity, right? All very key traits and characteristics that, generally speaking, a good person has, right? And it's this process of learning how to start to practice these traits, start to integrate these traits. So the light masculine, right, is generally the nice guy, right? And there's a whole model that I teach on this around the essentially like the healthy light masculine and then the unhealthy light masculine, right? And the healthy dark masculine and the unhealthy dark masculine, and same with the light feminine and the dark feminine. Like men have both the feminine and masculine traits, but generally speaking, we've got more masculine traits than feminine, right? But if we only integrated a little bit more feminine and surrender and nourishment and care, we'd be a little bit more balanced. So when we break down like the key aspects of where you sit in this quadrant of light fem, dark fem, light mask, dark mask, we start to recognize the gaps. We start to recognize where we're polarized. So a lot of dark masculine traits, which is like, leadership, authority, ownership, integrity, like these are quite heavy, polarizing traits to fully embody. And it's generally why there's so few guys that really own their dark masculine energy. A lot of the times what happens is men tend to be more light masculine and then dark feminine, right? So the dark feminine is the seductress, the manipulator, right? And will sway people with their words. And yeah, a lot of light masculine guys, when they're unintegrated, they think they have all these covert contracts. Basically, they think that, well, if I just do this and if I just do that, then I should get this. Then I should expect this, and it just creates these like this covert contract where there's this unspoken agreement out loud, which then leads to frustration and resentment because the light masculine didn't have the gumption or the integrity to just say it how it is, right? And the men who are light masculine tend to, like with women, there tends to be these shadowy traits that play out. And what I mean by the shadowy traits is, they won't say what they mean. They'll end up kind of poking holes. They'll be a little bit more like gaslighty in nature versus just saying it as it is, owning it as it is. Because those light masculine guys are just afraid of actually setting some fucking boundaries, right? Because they never learn how to set boundaries. They never got to watch a man set healthy boundaries with a woman, right? And it's kind of a bit of a tangent over here, but our mum and dad are the first people that we learn to watch how two people love each other, right?
Or don't. Or it
don't love
seems
each
like
other.
they don't. It's a weird way that they do. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's the love. Our perception of love is formed from the love that we did and we didn't receive from the people we most wanted it from, but also how we watch them love each other, right? Like if you watch your dad never really give that level of affection to your mom, or you watched him react, at some level in your brain, part of you thinks that's normal, right? Or part of that becomes your standard. Or you go the full opposite and you see some really, full on things happen. You're like, I'm never going to be like my dad. Fuck that guy. Fuck his traits. And then, they do everything they can in order to not be like their dad or not be like their mum. And they polarize themselves from it. So they don't want to be aggressive. They don't want to be an angry person. They don't want to be all this stuff. And so they end up trying to push it away. They reject it. They reject all of these things, right? But the problem when we reject all of these things is we push it outside of ourselves, and then we have shame or we get triggered by people that have those traits because we're not willing to fully accept that that's actually something we are capable of, right? And the problem is again, we turn it back into that shame piece of like, well, if I was seen to be doing that, I would be a shit person, right? I'd be a bad person. And, we label those people that have those traits as bad people, but we're just polarized by it. We're unwilling to acknowledge how those things can be a positive, how those traits can be positive, right? And we're unwilling to see the humanness in those people that polarize us.
Yeah. I definitely agree in the term too, when you talk about that light masculine, dark feminine, that definitely resonates. And then once you become aware of it, that's obviously the point that you can start to work on it. And I
Ooh,
think for anyone listening to look into any sort of that nice guy work, like if anything strikes a chord, definitely head down that pathway to learn a bit more about it. Because I think there's a lot of guys that aren't seeing that within themselves, or they're unaware. Like I've
yeah,
talked to my current partner. I remember I talked to my partner in the past about this idea of a nice guy, and I said, "You don't want a nice guy. Like you don't
no,
like nice guys." But what do girls always say? Oh, he's a nice guy, or they have a partner. He was such a great nice guy. Why'd you break up with him? Because there was probably all these covert contracts. There was all these underlying things that also weren't spoken about. You look
yeah.
like you had a thought or an idea before that you wanted to jump
Uh,
into.
I was thinking about like the types of women that like men are generally attracted to, and like the women that we generally are attracted to. When you actually break down like what makes you attracted to a certain woman, you actually get to realize the things. You get to start realizing your shadows. Like a lot of guys, like a lot of guys that like to be really masculine, they
Yeah.
tend they like the ideal of that. They'll end up attracting like a similar energy. They might attract a woman that's in her masculine, or they might attract someone that's very like solid, got their shit together, but they end up being really dark feminine because we're always attracting our wounds. We're attracting the unhealed
Mm,
version of those wounds, right? And
mm,
it's why people end up in the same shitty relationships. It's like the women and men that complain of like, I just always end up with these toxic guys. And I'm like, yeah, because you're fucking attracted to them. And the same with men. I
mm,
just always attract these women that like uh don't have any depth, or that, don't really want to like get to know me and who I really am at my core. It's like, yeah, because they're just being a reflection of you. And when you can fully start to realize the dynamics of your own attraction, you can actually look at the things that you actually want versus that you don't want. So you stop going through these same fucking cycles of just bullshit. Because, you know, the amount of people that go through 5 different relationships and then don't fucking learn their lessons from the previous relationship and then get into the exact same thing is fucking stupid. Like it's
man.
it's it's just like, man, learn the lesson so you don't do the same thing again. But be brave
Yeah.
enough to sit in it. Have the courage to just, okay, didn't like these things that she did. I didn't like these things that I did. How am I going to
Mm,
change it?
yeah. And I think it can go two ways. You can bounce straight back into it, which you see with a lot of people, or you can stay out too long. But maybe sometimes you do need a little bit longer to do the work on yourself. It's funny that you say that. Going like in my relationship now, there wasn't going to be a long break between my last relationship, and I've never been someone to bounce from one to the other. And as much as my partner would have hated this experience in that time frame, I couldn't commit to it right at that point, because I remember saying I have to be alone. Like I have to feel shit. Like I have to enjoy spending time on my own again, but I just need to deal like with these emotions and that feeling of, I don't know if the word would be grief, because I hadn't been upset before. I remember it was so healing the first time I cried after the last breakup, because
Mm,
I'm just not someone that's cried a lot in the past few years. But any time that I have, and there's been different situations that are topics for another conversation,
yeah,
but that was so healing. And then that time that I respected, I need to use for myself to go, all right, I need to realign, look at what happened in the relationship from the last relationship, which was probably 1 to 2 years prior. What have I worked on since then? Or am I doing the same shit? And I
yeah,
was like, all right, well, you've worked on this and that, but you kind of did the same thing there. So maybe you need to take a little bit of time, learn about that, work on yourself. Don't jump into anything, and then you can use that in future. But I love that point that people just jump straight back into them because they can't deal with being alone, and they honestly don't want to deal with some of their shit, some of their own
yeah.
faults that they need to. Yeah.
Yeah, a good little point in there is like men, generally speaking, need to go through anger to reach sadness. Like they need to let
Mm,
out, because anger is often the gateway, the barrier to that sadness. And then underneath the
mm.
sadness is the grief. Excuse me.
Bless you.
is
I
the
sneezed
grief.
like 16 times today, man. So
Yeah, bit of hay fever. Yeah, that grief is a big thing. Like men learning how to sit in sadness is such a powerful thing. Like that, it's funny. At least once a month, I've been finding like if I'm noticing things are building up inside of me, I'll just go for a walk and I'll just talk and I might cry, right?
mm,
And it's very cathartic. I'm like, oh,
mm,
it's been building up for a little bit these past few weeks. Um,
yeah,
but that ability for me to just sit in that and just grieve, it's what I
yeah,
need for the body to release that tension.
yeah. I feel like, would you agree that a lot of guys don't like the idea of it? A, because they think it makes them look weak. And we're not saying that you have to go do it in public or broadcast it to your friends and family that you've had a cry. But do you think they also feel like they'll get stuck there and they'll just sit in there for a long time and then they're going to turn into, the opposite side? If there's someone that never deals with their emotions and never cry, they're like, oh, well, then I'll always be crying. And then it's not like that, is it?
It's not like that, but yeah, that's a very real fear. Like guys
Yeah.
are afraid to open up the floodgates because they don't know they've never experienced doing it in a safe way. They've never had someone to
Mm,
demonstrate what it means to like be a healthy masculine guy and like let out the emotions and then move forwards from it. Yeah, very very reasonable thing. And also another one is like if I process my stuff, I'm going to lose my drive. That's another
yeah.
big fear I see a lot of people have. And like sometimes, like this is the thing, Michael. Sometimes you don't need to process everything. You don't need to dive super deep right now. If you're living a fairly good life, right, and you're enjoying it, then great, amazing, right? If you're a bit dysregulated, your nervous system's up and down, that's probably a sign to look at some of the triggers and look at what's going on. And in the same way, if you're inspired and you're ready for your next level and you're ready to level up and you're ready to step into a better version of you or the version of you that was put on this earth by the God, by universe to fucking become, then maybe you step up further. Maybe you see what you can do.
I love it, man. Love it.
Mm.
Um, we are running out of time, so we're going to cut out at some point, but we've got about 10 minutes. If you could give 1 to 2 pieces of advice for any guy that wants to perform at a higher level, whether they're already a high performer or they're someone that just knows they've got more potential, but they do feel stuck. They kind of know what to do. Maybe they're an over planner or they do take action, but they always just seem to run into blockades. What advice would you give them?
From the most effective and efficient perspective, when you can identify the traits inside yourself that you reject and you can actually start to accept those things. So there's a process I do with people where we find out like this assessment on their traits and temperament. And sometimes people are really low in exhibitionism. Sometimes they're really low in cunningness. Sometimes they're really low in ruthlessness. If you can start to learn how to fucking own the ruthlessness and own the cunningness and own the exhibitionism inside yourself, your entire identity will change. Right? You have to find every fucking reason why it's good. Because inside your mind right now, there's 100 reasons why they're bad. You got to balance out. You got to balance repolarize yourself to these traits. That's the biggest thing for like right now that you could do and understand. It's like, no. Why is me being ruthless a good thing? What does it give me? How do other people gain? How's it positive to my life? And you create 100 reasons, you'll become more ruthless.
Yeah. And is there what's a practical way to do this? Like just journaling down?
Um, I've got a process I take my guys through, but like the
I
simplicity
was going to
of
ask,
it.
do you have some sort of tool that you use with your clients that helps them to do that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a full kind of process that I take my guys through to uncover all the things they are polarized by. And when I say polarized, it's like things they don't want to accept. That they might not be as narcissistic. And narcissism can be very useful in business. It can be extremely useful to make more money and get more of what you want when it's used in the right way, right? So when you can identify those like 5 to 10 traits that you reject, and you just literally write a list. It's like cool. Greed. Some people fucking have mad greed avoidance. They're like, I don't want to be seen as greedy. And I'm like, well, looks like you don't want to make any money or support your family then. It's like going, like, why is greed good? What does greed give you? What's the impact of you being more greedy? How do other people gain? And you just repeat those 3 questions 30 times, you'll start to realize that it could actually be okay to be a little bit more greedy and take more of what you want and ask for more of what you want.
It's so funny that you say that. So the theme of my classes this week is a parigraha, which in yoga it's the 5th yama, and it means non-greed. So I was like, it's the complete opposite. But that's the thing, right? A lot of us don't take things with a grain of salt, or maybe look at it from a different angle. So
Yeah.
when is greed a good thing? That's a really good way to put it. Well, if you were greedy in a sense and you had more money, but that meant you could provide more for your family and your friends, and you could be that person that if someone is in need, maybe they've got a hospital bill, or they're really sick, something's going on in their life, they're having financial struggles, but because of that greed, you're able to give them money.
Yeah.
So it's like leaning into it when you need to it. And like you talked about, that was interesting. I haven't heard of the dark masculine, light masculine, dark feminine, light feminine before. Like leaning into that and understanding where you are on that playing field to shift that.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And like in the opposite of this as well is like, be more loving, be more compassionate, be more nurturing. Like 100 reasons why nurturing is a benefit to you, why self-love is a benefit for you. You know, it's such a simple process, but it balances out your paradigm, balances out your perception.
Yeah. I love it, man. There's so much value in this chat. And if I hadn't set the time limit to only allow us for 7 more minutes, I would continue it.
That's all good, man. That's all good.
But maybe it's a conversation another time in future, man. Hopefully we can even sit down and do it together. Would be an awesome way to do it.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So just let the audience know, how do they find you? Like, you're on Instagram, you've got the website. What's the best way to get into contact if anyone wants to get into doing some work with you?
Yeah, you can just follow me on Instagram at Lachlan.Mitchell __ and send me a message.
Yeah. Do you do any sort of events or anything, like any in-person sort of workshops, seminars?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. Now, at the moment, it's just one-on-one, and I'll be running some group, like a 6-month container thing soon.
Cool.
But yeah, just keep an eye out.
Okay. Awesome, man. Dude, loved having you on here. It's been a pleasure just meeting you recently as well, and I look forward to our conversations in future.
100%. Thank you.
That's it for today, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Just leave any feedback, any comments, and I'll reply to you. If you want to get in contact with Lockie, his Instagram handle is
Lachlan.Mitchell __